Turn on the camera. Now. That message came out of nowhere. Cold, sharp, and wrong. I was having dinner with my daughter, listening to her laugh, watching her smile like everything was fine in the world. Then my phone buzzed, and everything shifted. Her laughter filled the room, warm and easy, but that text felt like someone had slipped a knife between my ribs. She reached for my hand, curious about the message, when suddenly the front door slammed open. What happened next, no one could have predicted. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. My hands shook as I stared down at the check in front of me. My own name signed in a handwriting that almost passed as mine, except for the last curl of the signature. Too forced, too careful. The number beside it made my stomach turn. $5,000, payable to cash, dated 3 days ago. I had never written that check in my life. Behind me, the kitchen door creaked. Jessica walked in, wearing her usual polished confidence, designer purse hanging off one shoulder, car keys twirling between her fingers. When she saw what I was holding, she stopped dead. "Dad, what are you doing with that?" "Jessica," I said, raising the check so she could see it. "You want to tell me why this looks like my signature?" "Because I sure as hell didn't write it." Her face went pale. She stepped closer, reaching for the paper like she could make it disappear. "Dad, it's not what you think," she said, voice trembling. "I just needed." I pulled the check out of reach, standing up so fast my chair screeched across the tile. "You forged my name?" "Listen to me," she shouted, her voice cracking. "I'm in trouble, okay? Real trouble. I didn't know what else to do. The bills are out of control, and I couldn't ask you again after last time. So instead, you decided to steal from me?" Her composure crumbled. She clutched the counter, her knuckles white. "It's not stealing. You're my father." "I knew if you just listened, you'd understand." "Understand what? That my daughter's a thief?" The word hit her like a slap. Her eyes narrowed, pain flashing behind them. "A criminal? Really? After everything I've been through since Mom died, you think I wanted this?" My chest tightened. Catherine's death had broken something in both of us, but Jessica's grief had turned into something darker. Gambling, shopping, lies about debts that kept growing. "Your mother always worried you cared more about money than people," I said quietly. Her tone turned to ice. Don't bring Mom into this. She would have understood. She would have helped me." "By forging checks? By lying to banks?" She stared at me, then laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "You really think this is about one check? You have no idea, do you?" My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "Forget it," she said, turning away. She started grabbing things, her phone charger, perfume, her bag, moving like someone getting ready to bolt. "Jessica, what don't I know?" I demanded. She spun around, eyes blazing. "You want answers? Fine. This isn't the first time, Dad. Not even close. And you know what? I'm not sorry." My heart pounded in my ears. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you never understood me," she shot back. "Mom did, but you." She shook her head. "You only ever judged. You see problems, not solutions. You see me as a mistake you have to fix." She zipped her purse, the sound slicing through the silence. "I'm done explaining myself to someone who's already decided I'm a disappointment." "How many times?" I asked softly. Her hand paused on the door handle. She looked back, eyes full of something between shame and defiance. "More than you want to know, Dad? Way more." Then the door slammed, leaving the house echoing and hollow. I watched through the window as she crossed the driveway, heels striking hard against the pavement. Her car engine roared, and she was gone. I stood there for a long time, holding that check, the proof of how far things had fallen. Outside, the world carried on like nothing had changed. A dog barked once, then silence. Hours later, I sat on the subway heading downtown, the check folded in my pocket. Jessica's words kept looping in my mind, "More than you want to know." The train rocked gently as we pulled into the financial district. I hadn't slept. I needed answers. The bank tower rose 40 stories above me, steel and glass cutting into the gray morning sky. Inside, the marble floors gleamed under fluorescent light, footsteps echoing from every direction. At the front desk, I asked for someone who could help me review my account. "Mr. Brenner?" a woman's voice called. I turned to see her, early 30s, professional, polite. "I'm Linda Rodriguez, loan specialist. I understand you have questions about your account." We sat down at her desk, a tidy space filled with files and the hum of her computer. I took the check from my jacket and set it in front of her. "I found this yesterday. I didn't write it." Her expression changed, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. She turned to her screen and started typing. "Let me pull up your full profile," she said. A few seconds passed before she looked up again. "Mr. Brenner," she said carefully, "it shows here you have an active loan for $500,000. The words hit like ice water down my spine. "That's impossible," I said slowly. "I never took out a loan like that." "It was approved 6 months ago," Linda said, turning the monitor toward me. "Here's your signature on all the paperwork." I leaned in, squinting at the screen. My name stared back at me in looping ink, perfect down to the smallest flourish, but I didn't remember signing any of it. Not the dates, not the loan amounts, none of it. "This is forgery," I said, my voice low and distant like it belonged to someone else. "My daughter! Oh, God, what has she done?" Linda's expression softened. "Mr. Brenner, I'm truly sorry, but this is serious. If these signatures were falsified, we need to take immediate action." "Show me everything." For the next 20 minutes, she walked me through the wreckage of my financial life. The $500,000 loan was only the beginning. There were credit cards, personal loans, cash advances, all opened under my name, all approved without question because my record had been spotless. Each one carried my forged signature. "The total exposure is roughly $700,000, she said quietly. The number made the room tilt. 700,000. Everything Catherine and I had built together, the savings, the home equity, the careful planning of 40 years, gone. "When did this start?" I asked. She checked her screen. "The first activity appeared 11 months ago. A $5,000 credit card. Then things escalated quickly. 11 months, right after Catherine's funeral. While Jessica had been pretending to grieve, while I'd been trying to hold her together, she had been doing this." "What can I do?" I asked, though I already knew the answer wouldn't fix what was broken. Linda slid a stack of papers toward me. "You'll need to file a police report for identity theft. The bank will launch a full investigation, but—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Fraud of this scale, especially when it involves a family member, can get complicated." I stood on unsteady legs, clutching the documents to my chest. The air conditioning suddenly felt like winter. "Thank you," I managed to say. "Mr. Brenner," she added softly, "I'm obligated to inform you, some of these accounts are already in default. You'll likely receive legal notices soon." The elevator ride down felt endless. When the doors finally opened, the summer heat outside hit me like a physical blow. People rushed past, laughing, drinking coffee, taking calls, living their lives, while mine had just been shattered in a sterile office. I stared down at the papers in my hands, every page a piece of evidence that my daughter had betrayed me. When I got home, the sound of my keys hitting the kitchen counter was loud enough to echo. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene. I spread the documents out across the same table where I'd first discovered the forged check barely a day earlier. $700,000. I organized the pages by date, watching the pattern take shape, month after month of deceit. November 2024, the first credit card, $5,000. December, a $20,000 personal loan. January, another credit card. February, the big one, a $500,000 mortgage taken against my house. My house. The one Catherine and I bought as newlyweds. The one where Jessica took her first steps. The one where Catherine breathed her last upstairs. I walked to the living room and stared at her picture on the mantel. Her smile, frozen in time, still had the power to steady me. It was taken on our 30th anniversary. Her favorite blue dress, the one Jessica borrowed and never gave back. "What would you tell me to do?" I asked the empty room. Catherine had always seen through Jessica's charm. "She loves money more than people," she'd once said after Jessica vanished for a week with $200. "One day, that's going to ruin someone." Back then, I told her she was being too harsh, too suspicious. I see now she wasn't being cruel. She was warning me. I sat back down at the table, grabbed a legal pad, and started making notes. Every option felt like a wound waiting to open. I could go to the police, report the identity theft, let the justice system handle her. That would mean prison time for my daughter. Or I could try to deal with it quietly, demand repayment, try to salvage whatever was left between us. But the math didn't lie. Even if she wanted to fix this, which I doubted, she didn't have $700,000. This wasn't desperation. It was deliberate. calculated. I scrolled through my contacts until I found her name. My thumb hovered over the call button. What did I even hope for? That she'd cry? Apologize? Promise to make it right? The woman who'd left this house yesterday wasn't the same girl who cried at her mother's funeral. She was the woman who forged my name again and again, who mortgaged my home, who looked me in the eye and called me judgmental. That woman was a stranger, but she was still my daughter. I set the phone down and walked to the window. The old swing still hung in the backyard, rusted but standing. I'd built it for her 7th birthday, spending 3 weekends making sure it would never fall. Funny. I'd spent my life trying to keep her safe, and now she was the one I needed protection from. The phone buzzed on the counter, pulling me back. A message from Paul Martinez. Haven't heard from you in weeks. Coffee this afternoon? Paul, my old partner from the Boston Police Department, 25 years on the force. Maybe, just maybe, he could help me figure out where to start. Paul was retired now, but his instincts were still razor sharp. The man had seen it all, family breakdowns, betrayals, and the kind of heartbreak that leaves people hollow. If anyone could help me make sense of what my daughter had done, it was him. But instead of calling Paul, my thumb drifted toward Jessica's name again. She needed to know I'd uncovered everything, needed to understand that this wasn't something she could bury or talk her way out of. Whether I went to the police or handled it quietly, she had to face the weight of what she'd done. One call, that's all it would take to change everything between us forever. Still, pretending nothing had happened wouldn't make the forged signatures vanish. I pressed the number and listened as it rang. 24 hours later, I was still staring at her contact on my screen. The bank paperwork covered my kitchen table like crime scene evidence. I'd gone over the conversation in my head a dozen times, but my hands still trembled as I hit call. 4 rings. Then her voice, flat, cold, detached. "What do you want, Dad?" "Jessica," I said quietly. "I know about the $500,000 loan. Explain this to me." Silence. In the background, I could hear canned laughter from a television show, mocking, cruel in its normalcy. "What loan?" she asked, but her voice wavered. The confidence from yesterday was gone, replaced by something uneasy. "The $500,000 you took out against my house," I said. "The bank showed me everything." "Dad, you're overreacting. It's just temporary financial trouble." "Temporary?" My grip tightened around the phone. "I'm looking at 12 forged documents right now. 12. Credit cards, loans, cash advances, $700,000 in total." The TV went silent. I pictured her fumbling for the remote, the same panic that had flooded me when I found that first check. "You went to the bank?" she asked, her voice suddenly small. "I had to," I said. "I needed to know how deep this went. And now I do." I glanced at one of the papers in front of me. November 15th, personal loan for $20,000. December 3rd, credit card. January. Stop. The word hit like a whip crack. "Just stop, okay? I never meant for it to go this far." "But it did," I said, my voice shaking. "You mortgaged my home, Jessica. The house your mother and I bought together, the one where she died, the one I thought I'd spend the rest of my life in." She snapped back, her tone sharp as glass. "You only ever think about money. What about me? What about what I've been dealing with?" "Your problems," I shouted before I could stop myself. "You made those problems when you decided to steal from me." "I didn't steal," she fired back. "I needed help, and you never listen. You're stingy with everything. Mom was right about you." The mention of Catherine hit like a punch to the gut. "Don't you dare bring your mother into this," I said. "She would be ashamed of what you've done." "Ashamed?" she shot back. She understood me. She knew what it was like to want more from life. You never understood either of us. I turned away from the phone, pacing toward the window. Outside, Mrs. Garcia from next door was watering her roses, her quiet little world untouched while mine burned to ash. "Your mother warned me about your obsession with money," I said, forcing the words out. "She said you cared more about it than people. I defended you then." "She said that?" Jessica's voice cracked. "She said one day it would destroy someone. I thought she meant me. I never realized she was warning me about you." "Dad, listen." "No," I snapped. "You listen. After your mother died, I tried. I gave you whatever you needed. I never asked questions, and this is how you thank me? You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the bills, the collectors." Pressure you created, I cut in. I had a simple plan, a quiet retirement. Maybe take that trip your mother and I always dreamed about. But now I might lose everything because my own daughter is a thief. I'm not a criminal, she shouted. You forged my name, I said, my voice trembling. You opened accounts in my identity. You stole $700,000. What would you call that? The line went quiet except for her breathing, heavy, ragged, angry. I call it survival, she said finally, her words slow and deliberate. And if you can't understand that, maybe Mom was right about more than just money. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I asked. Figure it out yourself. The line went dead. I stood there holding the silent phone, staring at the black screen that mirrored my own tired face. Outside, I could hear kids laughing somewhere down the street, their voices rising and fading with the evening breeze. $700,000. My daughter, my only family left. I set the phone beside the stack of papers spread across the table and tried to figure out what came next. The next morning, I climbed the narrow stairs to Paul's apartment, gripping a manila folder stuffed with bank statements and legal documents. My legs felt heavy, each step harder than the last. I hadn't slept since Jessica hung up on me. Paul answered on the second knock, his face, older now but still sharp, filled with concern the moment he saw me. William, you look awful. I need to talk to someone who understands criminals, I said quietly. He stepped aside without another word, motioning me inside. The small kitchen smelled like coffee and old wood, the familiar scent that had once meant early morning stakeouts and long hours at the precinct. Paul had always been solid, 25 years on the Boston Police Department, retired now but still alert, still sharp as a blade. What's going on? He asked. I dropped into the chair at his old wooden table and opened the folder. Papers spilled across the surface like pieces of my ruined life. It's Jessica, I said. I don't know what to do. She's my daughter. Paul poured 2 mugs of coffee, black, no sugar, the way we both took it, and sat down across from me. His gray eyes scanned the documents with that familiar mix of curiosity and caution. Start from the top. So I did. I told him about the forged check in my kitchen, the visit to the bank, and the discovery of the massive fraud that had hollowed out my accounts. Paul didn't interrupt. Every so often, he'd pick up a sheet, study it, and set it back down in a tidy stack. $500,000, he muttered finally, sliding one loan form aside. William, this isn't a mistake. This is grand larceny. Serious crime. I can't send my own daughter to prison, I said, the words barely leaving my throat. Paul leaned back, his arms crossed, the look of a man who'd seen this kind of heartbreak too many times before. And she can ruin you financially. You've thought about that, haven't you? I have, I said. All night. I just keep thinking maybe she'll come to her senses. Maybe she'll make it right. Time for what? He asked flatly. So she can forge a few more signatures? I just need to believe I can fix this somehow. Paul sighed and walked to the window, looking out over the Cambridge street we'd both called home for decades. William, people who pull scams like this, especially on family, don't suddenly grow a conscience. She's not a criminal off the street, I said, raising my voice. She's my daughter. She's your daughter, he agreed, who stole $700,000 from you. That's not a misunderstanding. That's felony-level fraud. I watched him instinctively start organizing the papers into neat piles, his old cop habits kicking in. Each document became a piece of a case file. What would you do if it were your kid? I asked quietly. He looked at me for a long time before answering. If it were mine, I'd want to believe they could change too, but I'd still protect myself. How? File a police report. Get everything documented. Even if you don't press charges, you need to put this on record. You have to protect what's left. The thought of walking into a police station and saying the words, "My daughter defrauded me," made my stomach twist. I can't, I said. Not yet. Paul nodded slowly, though his eyes betrayed something else, calculation, maybe even worry. All right, he said finally, but promise me something. Don't let her rope you into anything stupid. Don't sign a single piece of paper. Don't give her access to a penny. I won't. And keep those documents safe, he said, gesturing to the pile. They're your only proof now. I slid the papers back into the folder, feeling like I'd aged 10 years in a single morning. Paul followed me to the door and rested a hand on my shoulder. You're a good father, William, he said, But sometimes being a good father means making decisions you hate. I nodded, too drained to respond, and walked home with the folder tucked tightly under my arm. I didn't see Paul pick up his phone the second I left, or the look in his eyes that said he'd already made a call I wasn't ready to make. Some choices, I was about to learn, get made for you. 3 days went by without a word. I kept the phone close, hoping for an apology or even a confession, anything that meant the girl I'd raised still existed somewhere beneath the lies. On Thursday evening, as I sat poking at a frozen dinner, the phone finally rang. Jessica's name lit up the screen. "Hi, Dad." Her voice was different, soft, uncertain, almost shy. "I've been thinking about what we said the other day." I nearly dropped the fork. "Jessica, I wasn't expecting to hear from you." "I know," she said, "and I'm sorry. I was angry and scared, and I said a lot of things I didn't mean." She took a shaky breath. "I've been doing a lot of soul searching these past few days." My heart started pounding again, cautiously hopeful. "Have you really?" "I know I hurt you," she said, her voice breaking just a little. "I know I did, and I want to make things right." It was the same tone she used to use as a little girl, when she'd break something precious and come running to me, eyes wide, hoping I could fix it before her mother found out. "I want that too, sweetheart," I said softly. "Can you come for dinner tomorrow night?" she asked. "I'll make your favorite pot roast with the carrots you always loved when Mom cooked it." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Catherine's pot roast. Jessica hadn't made it once since the funeral. "Of course," I said, my voice rough. "I knew you'd understand, Dad, and bring all those papers from the bank. We'll go through them together and figure out how to fix this mess." The rush of relief that hit me was so strong I had to sit down. "Really? You mean that?" "I mean it," she said. 7 o'clock tomorrow. "And Dad?" "Yes?" "I love you. I know I don't say it enough, but I do." After she hung up, I sat there grinning like a fool. The voice I just heard, it wasn't the cold, angry woman from before. It was my daughter again. Thoughtful, regretful, trying to make things right. Maybe the bitterness I'd heard before had been nothing but fear. People make bad choices when they're scared. Maybe she was finally ready to change. That night, I lay awake, planning what I'd say, how we'd face the banks together. Maybe she could take a small loan from work, or we could set up a long-term payment plan. None of it would be easy, but we'd figure it out, as a family. By 6:30 the next evening, I loaded the manila folder into the car and drove toward Boston. The roads were clear, the sky soft with evening light, and I found a parking spot right in front of her building. Everything felt like it was finally falling into place. In the elevator, I caught myself humming a tune I hadn't thought of since Catherine died. The smell of pot roast hit me before the door even opened. Jessica's face lit up when she saw me. "Dad!" She wrapped her arms around me, and for a second I could almost believe the past week hadn't happened. She'd done her hair the way her mother used to, soft and natural, and the apartment smelled like Sunday dinners from years ago. "I'm so glad you came," she said. The dining table was set with her best china. Candles flickered between two wine glasses. She'd even worn the blue dress I bought her last Christmas. "This looks wonderful, Jess." "I wanted it to be special," she said, smiling. "A new beginning for us." She took the folder from my hands and placed it carefully on the side table. "We'll look through all this after dinner, all right? I just want us to eat and talk first." I nodded, feeling my chest tighten with gratitude. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I'd gotten my daughter back. I had no idea I was walking straight into her trap. That morning, I'd woken before dawn, my mind already spinning with plans for the evening. For the first time in days, there was something like hope sitting quietly in my chest. Jessica wanted to make things right. My daughter was coming back to me. The day felt lighter somehow. I pressed my best navy suit, the one Catherine always said made my eyes look less tired, and made sure every line was perfect. After breakfast, I opened the family photo albums I hadn't touched since the funeral. Page after page, there she was. Jessica at 6, covered in flour from baking cookies with her mother. Jessica at 15, rolling her eyes at my camera but smiling anyway. Her high school graduation, beaming in her cap and gown. Somewhere between those moments and now, the girl I raised had disappeared, replaced by someone I barely recognized. "Tonight, I get her back," I told Catherine's picture on the mantel. By noon, I had every document sorted neatly into chronological order. Each page told its own story: Jessica's mistakes, her fear, her bad decisions. But tonight, they'd represent something else: forgiveness. I stopped at the flower shop on Commonwealth Avenue to buy white roses, her favorite since childhood. Catherine used to buy them for her every birthday. Special occasion? The elderly woman behind the counter asked. I'm reconciling with my daughter, I said. Her face softened. That's wonderful. These will be perfect. I chose a dozen and asked her to wrap them in pale yellow paper. Jessica used to say yellow meant new beginnings. The afternoon dragged by. I cleaned the house again, even though it didn't need it, checked the mirror too many times, practiced what I'd say: Jessica, we can fix this. I love you more than you know. At 5, I called a cab. The folder went into my old leather briefcase, the roses in my arms, and Catherine's engagement ring, the one I'd kept aside for Jessica's wedding day, slipped into my jacket pocket. Maybe tonight I'd give it to her anyway, as a sign that trust could still be rebuilt. The subway ride into Boston felt endless. I sat surrounded by strangers, clutching the briefcase that held both the evidence of my daughter's betrayal and the chance to forgive her for it. When I reached her building, the sky was already turning dark. Glass and steel shimmered above me, the lights from the upper floors glowing like stars. I checked my watch, 6:55 p.m., right on time. In the elevator mirror, I saw a man trying hard to believe that love could still fix what greed had broken. The white roses filled the small space with a sweet scent, their petals brushing against my sleeve. When the doors opened, Jessica was already waiting in the doorway, radiant, smiling, dressed in that same blue gown I'd given her last Christmas. For the first time in months, it felt like home again. She rushed toward me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders with a warmth that almost felt real. Dad, you look wonderful, she said, taking the flowers and pressing them to her face. White roses. You remembered. Her apartment smelled exactly like she'd promised: pot roast and carrots, rich and comforting. The table was set perfectly, candles flickering between the good china and the tall glasses. For a second, it almost felt like the past, like Catherine might come walking out of the kitchen any minute, wiping her hands on a towel. This is beautiful, Jess. I wanted tonight to be special, she said. A fresh start for us. She guided me to the couch, smiling as she took my briefcase and set it gently on the side table. Wine? I picked up that Merlot you like. We sat across from each other, plates steaming, the candlelight soft between us, but something in the air was off. Jessica's eyes kept darting toward the briefcase. On her coffee table, half buried under a stack of magazines, I spotted what looked like unpaid bills and credit card statements, reminders of chaos she hadn't cleaned up. The pot roast is perfect, I said, trying to break the tension. Tastes just like your mom's. I found her old recipe card, she said quickly. The smile she gave me didn't quite reach her eyes. Dad, about those documents you brought. We'll get to that, I interrupted gently. I took another bite of roast, letting the familiar flavor ground me. I'm just happy we're here, talking again. Me too, she said, though her leg bounced beneath the table. How much did you say the total was? 700,000, I answered. I watched her closely, but she only nodded, too fast, too eager. Right, she said. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Her fingers tapped lightly against her wine glass. I've been thinking about how we can handle the logistics. I'm glad to hear that, I said, leaning back. I am too, she said, her tone sharpening into something rehearsed. Here's what I need from you, Dad. To start paying that money back, I'll need some capital. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Capital? Seed money, she said brightly. Just enough to get things moving, maybe 100,000 to begin with. I've got some investment opportunities lined up. Low risk, high return. It's the fastest way to pay you back. The roast turned dry and heavy in my throat. Jessica, I said slowly, you owe me $700,000. I didn't come here to loan you more. Dad, listen logically, she said, slipping into that familiar tone she'd used as a teenager when trying to talk her way out of trouble. You can't expect me to make money if I don't have any to start with. This is simple economics. Are you actually asking me for more money? I'm offering a business solution, she said, her composure beginning to crack. You want your money back? This is how it happens. Jessica, I said, my voice low, you forged my signature. You stole from me. You mortgaged my house, and now you want me to give you more? It's not giving, it's investing, she snapped. You're being unbelievably short-sighted. I pushed back my chair, the legs scraping against the floor. Short-sighted, you committed multiple felonies. Everything I did was for survival, she shouted, standing up now, trembling with anger. You have no idea what it takes to keep your head above water in this city, what I deal with every day. So you decided to ruin my life instead? I decided, she said coldly, to use resources that were going to be mine anyway. She threw her arm toward the room. When you die, all this is mine. I just needed access to some of it now. The words landed like punches. This wasn't desperation talking anymore. It was calculation. Get out, she said suddenly. What? Get out of my apartment, Dad. Take your papers, your lectures, your judgment, just go. She moved toward the side table where my briefcase sat, and take those with you. I stepped forward. Jessica, give me that. No. Her grip tightened on the handle. I think I'll hang on to these. We both held on, neither willing to let go, faces inches apart. I searched her eyes, but the daughter I remembered, the little girl who used to fall asleep mid-story on my shoulder, was gone. What stared back at me was cold, angry, and unrecognizable. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A few hours later, the apartment was filled with flashing lights and the low murmur of police voices. Officers moved carefully through the space, photographing papers, collecting evidence. The pot roast still sat untouched on the table, candles burning low. I stood near the window, my phone in hand, staring down at the same mysterious message that had appeared just as everything fell apart. Mr. Brenner? Detective Sullivan's voice pulled me back. He was a tall man with a steady gaze, notebook in hand. We'll need a full statement about the fraud and any other related crimes. I nodded, the weight of the night settling over me. An hour earlier, I'd thought I was coming here for forgiveness. Now, I was standing in the wreckage of that hope, watching strangers document the ruins of my family. Now she sat in handcuffs, her wrists trembling as uniformed officers moved through her apartment, photographing every trace of what she'd done. These documents will become evidence in the prosecution, Detective Sullivan said, carefully slipping each page into a labeled evidence bag. The originals with the forged signatures are key. Will I have to testify? I asked quietly. Most likely, yes, he replied. Your statement will help establish the full timeline and scope of the fraud. He studied my face for a moment. Are you all right, sir? I know this has been a difficult evening. Traumatic didn't even begin to describe it. Detective, I said after a pause, how did you even know to come here tonight? How did you know about the dinner? Sullivan exchanged a quick look with his partner, then offered a faint, knowing smile. You've got good friends, Mr. Brenner. Someone called in a tip about ongoing financial crimes and suggested this would be the right time to intervene. My hands began to shake as the realization set in. A friend called? I asked. Someone with law enforcement experience? They'd already been investigating on their own, Sullivan said. We coordinated with them to make sure everything was handled properly. Paul. It had to be Paul. 20 minutes later, I sat in the back of a taxi, watching Jessica's apartment disappear in the rear window as we drove toward Cambridge. The driver tried to make small talk about the weather, but I could barely hear him. My oldest friend had set the entire operation in motion, the sting, the timing, the arrest. Back home, I sank into my armchair, surrounded by the same family photos I'd looked at that morning, when I still believed forgiveness was possible. Catherine's smiling face watched from the mantel, her eyes frozen in a warmth that cut me now. Would she be proud of what happened tonight? Proud that justice was finally served? Or heartbroken knowing our daughter was in a cell somewhere? I didn't know. Maybe both. I picked up my phone, scrolling to Paul's number, my thumb hovering above the call button, just as it had the day I decided to confront Jessica. That felt like another lifetime. The text message still glowed on my screen. Turn on the camera. There's going to be a show. Now I understood. Paul had wanted video proof, Jessica's words, her greed, her complete lack of remorse. He'd orchestrated every piece of it. I hit call. He answered on the first ring. Paul, I said, you set this up, didn't you? Yes, he said simply, no hesitation at all. The confirmation hit me hard, even though I already knew. William, he said, his voice calm and steady, you never would have done it yourself. You love her too much to see what she's become. How long? I asked. How long have you been planning this? Since the moment you left my apartment, he said. I knew you wouldn't press charges. You'd protect her instead of yourself, so I decided to protect you. You. His tone was the same one I remembered from the job, measured, professional, but lined with quiet empathy. I followed her for 3 days, he continued. You what? She was already meeting new targets, William. Elderly men, mostly. She'd been grooming her next victims while trying to bleed you dry. I documented everything. Times, places, faces. Papers shuffled on his end of the line. I sent it all to Sullivan. He's an old colleague. When he saw what she'd done, he agreed we had enough for an arrest. The text last night, I said, realizing, that was you. I needed video proof, he said. Her demanding more money from you, showing she had no intention of repaying anything. I was watching from across the street, William. When I saw her grab your briefcase and the argument heat up, I sent the text and called Sullivan. I walked to the window, looking out at the quiet Cambridge street where Paul and I had been neighbors for more than 20 years. You could have told me, I said quietly. No, I couldn't, he replied. You would have warned her, or worse, talked yourself out of it. You've always been willing to sacrifice yourself for the people you love. His voice softened. Friends protect each other, even when it hurts. She's going to prison, I said flatly. She belongs there, he said. If I hadn't acted, you'd be bankrupt within the year. She wasn't going to stop, William. She was already looking for her next victims. How many people should lose everything because you can't accept who she really is? The words hit hard because they were true. I would have kept hoping, kept forgiving, right up until there was nothing left of me to save. What happens now? I asked. Now, Paul said, you tell the truth. When the time comes, you testify. The prosecution has more than enough evidence. She'll probably take a plea deal. I sank back into the kitchen chair, my body suddenly heavy. I don't even know how to feel about this. Feel grateful, Paul said gently. Grateful that someone cared enough to do what you couldn't. Feel relieved, you're safe now, and feel proud that for once you're holding her accountable. Will you come with me to the hearing? I asked quietly. Of course, he said without hesitation. We've faced everything together so far. This won't be any different. After we hung up, I sat alone in the stillness of my kitchen, the weight of everything settling in, the betrayal, the justice, the loss. The house felt quieter than ever, as if even the walls were mourning what family used to mean. He'd risked our friendship to save me from my blindness, from the part of me that refused to see who Jessica had really become. He'd used every bit of his training, his contacts, and his instincts to protect me when I couldn't protect myself. Catherine used to say Paul was the kind of friend every man should have. Now I understood exactly what she meant. 3 weeks later, he pulled up in his old Honda, the same one he'd driven since retirement. We didn't talk much on the ride, just the steady hum of the engine and the city slowly coming to life around us. Ahead, the federal courthouse rose like a monument to consequences, its limestone pillars cutting sharp lines against the pale July sky. We parked a block away and walked up the wide stone steps together. My best suit felt stiff, almost foreign, after weeks of loose shirts and sleepless nights. Ready for this? Paul asked, adjusting his tie. As ready as I'll ever be, I said. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Wood-paneled walls, the faint smell of paper and old varnish, serious faces all around. Jessica sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, her hair tied back in a severe bun. She looked nothing like the woman who had served me pot roast just 3 weeks ago. She didn't look up when I entered. Judge Rebecca Hartman presided with quiet control, her silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses giving her the air of someone who'd seen every shade of human failure and no longer flinched at any of it. Mr. Brenner, she said gently when my turn came, would you like to make a statement? I stood, hands shaking slightly as I unfolded the paper I'd written and rewritten a dozen times. Your Honor, I began, my daughter stole $700,000 from me over 11 months. She forged my signature, opened accounts in my name, and mortgaged my house without my consent. My voice steadied as I went on. But the money isn't the worst part. What she really took was trust. She used my love for her as leverage, twisted it until I couldn't see straight. Even after being caught, she showed no real remorse, only anger that she'd been stopped. Across the room, Jessica's shoulders trembled, but she still didn't turn to face me. I love my daughter, I said, but I can't keep rescuing her from the consequences of her choices. If she's ever going to change, she needs to face them. When Jessica finally stood to speak, her voice was small. I'm sorry for what I did to my father. I was desperate. I made terrible mistakes. It should have sounded like remorse, but there was something rehearsed about it, like lines practiced in a mirror during long, sleepless nights in a cell. Judge Hartman's tone was calm but firm as she delivered the sentence. Jessica Brenner, you are hereby sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for identity theft, document forgery, and bank fraud. You are also ordered to pay full restitution in the amount of $700,000 to the victim. The gavel struck once, final, echoing, a sound like a door closing on a chapter that would never reopen. As the marshals led Jessica away, she finally turned her head. Her eyes met mine for a fleeting moment. I hope you're happy now, she said quietly. I hope you learn responsibility, I replied. Outside, the sun was bright, almost blinding. Paul and I walked down the courthouse steps side by side. The city moved around us as if nothing monumental had happened, but for me, the air felt cleaner, lighter somehow. Justice has been served, friend, Paul said, his voice steady. I nodded. Peace, I said softly. Not happiness, but peace. Because there was nothing joyful about watching your own child face punishment. But there was relief, honest, painful relief, knowing the lies had finally ended. Thank you, I said, looking at him, for doing what I couldn't. That's what friends are for, he said simply. We walked toward the car, two old men who understood that sometimes the truest act of love is refusing to let someone keep destroying themselves. Catherine would have understood. She always believed that love without limits wasn't love. It was permission for harm. Jessica would serve her sentence. Maybe she'd finally learn accountability, and I would rebuild what was left of my life, knowing that for once I had chosen truth over illusion, justice over denial. The scales at last had found their balance. To hear the next story, click the box on the left, and as always, thank you for watching.